Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are in season 23, episode 7, coming to the end of this season after next week. Got myself, Dan Fellers, and Camille Parks. Welcome back, Camille.
Hello.
And Ale Losa is unavailable for today. Should be back next week, so it's going to be the two of us today. And we are post-apocalypse. We survived the great outage of February 20th, 2026. Outage for, do we know the full length?
I was in like an all-day meeting that morning, and then about 11 Pacific Standard, I checked, Airtable was not loading. I was like, I'll go to early lunch. It'll be fine. 12 o'clock, nope. 1 o'clock, nope. It wasn't back up for me until 4:30 Pacific Standard. So that's at least 5, probably upwards of 6 hours for most.
Yeah, that's probably about the time frame. Yeah, it was crazy. I was similar. I noticed it was down. I was like, oh, okay, I've got a lunch appointment. I went out for lunch and I was like, oh, for sure, it'll be back when I come back. No. So as far as I can remember, this is by far the longest outage we've had time-wise. Can you remember one that was at this length?
I haven't remembered a longer outage. I did see a post on Reddit where someone was, and rightfully so, a bit worried. They were like, hey, I'm new to Airtable. Is this a common thing? And a lot of people said, no, it never goes down. I don't agree with that. Airtable has a substantial outage probably once every 6 months, I would say. But I think it's rare for every base to be down. That was this past Friday. Yeah. Oftentimes the outage is several bases are down or several bases are slow, which affects quite a few of the customers, perhaps not all. This one on Friday, tremendously bad. The homepage didn't load. Airtable.com with the marketing like join Airtable. That page did not load, which means it was at the server level.
Yeah.
it was down.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, major outage. I don't know that they've publicly stated what went down. I don't believe it was AWS, which I know they run on. I don't think there was a major AWS outage or anything. I think it was Airtable specific. In the early days, it would go down quite a bit more, across the board like this, but not for this duration. But they definitely stabilized it for a while, where it was more isolated issues. But yeah, this was a big one. I'm sure it was all hands on deck. And maybe there was a correlation. Let's talk about, let me bring this up, from the company that brought you Super Agent that we've talked about before. On that very same day, they announced Hyper Agent. So Airtable now owns Super Agent and Hyper Agent. What is the difference, you ask? I don't know. No, there is a difference. The one difference is Hyper Agent is not actually live. You have to join the wait list, so you can't actually try it. But there is a video intro here. You want to explain the difference?
Yeah. So to the best of my ability, I believe Super Agent is one tool that allows you to auto-generate content. That could be a website, it could be a report, it could be, I think, a presentation deck, etc. It is specifically designed to do that task with a couple of variations of what the final output might look like, but that is generally what Super Agent is for. In creating that content package, it will do research specifically about whatever prompt you give it and then design a relatively nice looking report or slides or whatever you had it generate. Hyper Agent is it's like a a place where you can set up multiple different agents that can do whatever you define them as being. So rather than being a pre-built solution specifically for research and I'll just say report generation, HyperAgent is more like you create as many agents as you need or as many as your plan would allow, and each of those agents can have a predefined task that you give it in order to create a somewhat regular output in a format that's pleasing to you. So it's not necessarily create a website. It might be research this topic and give me a summarized output that you can take and make a report on your own, for example.
Yeah, that's good. And yeah, so you can watch the video. Turn the sound off. So yeah, you can go through this video, and then there's also Howie has his own Substack. This was the first I'd seen of Howie's Hubstack. Howie's the CEO of Airtable, and makes a pretty big, bold claim here. AGI is here, now harness it. That might be a little bit of a reach. I don't think we're quite there yet, but this is their attempt at that. So yeah, so here he kind of explains, and it sounds like Howie Liu is heavily involved with the development of this. So it definitely has his fingerprints in the building of this. So definitely something he's going to be pushing. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this rolls out. So I signed up for the waiting list. I've not gotten access yet. We'll see when that happens. We can show a sneak peek of it. Yeah, we'll check it out. See if okay, that was his first post. So this is a new Substack for Howie.
So another difference between Super Agent and Hyper Agent was when Super Agent launched, and still today, I think, if you scroll through their website, there's no indication that its parent company is, I want to say FormaGrid, which is the same parent company that Airtable has. And then if you look at the attribution in like the bottom right corner of each website, this one says Airtable and the other one says Super Agent. So Super Agent is truly a standalone business entity that happens to have the same CEO, basically. Hyper Agent has a direct connection to Airtable. It's one of the data sources that you can add to it. And Airtable is mentioned by name on the website, and it's copyrighted apparently by Airtable. So there's much more of a connection between Hyper Agent and Airtable than there is to Super Agent and Airtable, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. Yeah, you wonder how. Yeah, because this is much more in line with the workflow of Airtable. So
the best way I could kind of describe it, it's not the same, but it is similar to, in Airtable, you can create an automation and that automation can follow a series of steps. This is similar to that, except it's with AI. So the AI is following the steps that you tell it to do.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so we'll be following this, see how it progresses, see what how it changes Airtable, what the integrations look like, out. So very cool stuff. All right, on today's show, we're gonna learn some tips and tricks from Camille on how to improve our naming conventions, stay clean and tight with our stuff. So I'm gonna share your screen. I remove mine. There you go.
Yeah, so I had to deal with what I'm about to describe quite a bit in my sort of day-to-day working with Airtable. This is really about when you have one or more tables linked together And you end up with fields that look like this. The first field, if you don't name them as you go, is going to be named after the table that they're connected to. And if you add a second link, it's going to be that same name 2 and then 3. And then if you add lookups against them, they're going to follow whatever the linked record field is named at the time and whatever field from the other table that you're pulling in. So in this case, email. What is helpful, I feel, is going back and renaming these fields to be more specific. So I don't want context 2, context 3. I want these to say what they are. And one of the issues with that is it doesn't take too much time to go back and rename these fields over here. But then going back to the context table, you'll notice productions 2, and productions 3. So I have the same problem. But, what if productions 2 doesn't necessarily link to context 2? What if I did these kind of a little bit out of order? Well, it's, at least if you're on, I think business plan or higher, you have the dependency checker. So I could see, this is context 2. So I know what to rename it to once I fix it on the productions table. I built a tool that makes managing this a little bit easier. So the general idea is you pick one table to start with and you adjust the fields to what they should be. So let's say this is the director of the movie, and this is the writer of the movie, and this was the producer of the movie. I could go through to the context table and make that same adjustment, or I could use one of the scripts that I wrote. And I notice Airtable is still saving, so I'm going to let it finish thinking before I continue. In the meantime, I'm going to open up my extensions panel. This script is available on my GitHub, so you'll be able to find the link, and you should be able to copy and paste as is. I built it as almost like a wizard where it's going to ask you questions as you go. So there's no settings that you need to configure with this script, and you shouldn't need to change anything in the body of the script except for the naming conventions, which we'll get to. It's finally done saving. So I'm just going to run this. So first question, select a table that has fields you want to rename. The table should have at least one linked record field. So in this case, I want to rename these production link fields. So I'm going to select the context table because that's where the fields are. Now, what the script has just done is it looked and saw that the contacts table is linked to both productions and companies. Obviously, the production one's over here, but company and CEO both linked to companies. So the question is, what relationship do we want to tackle? And you'll see after I finish with productions, I can go back and do companies without stopping the script and starting over. So I'm going to do productions, and then it's going to ask me the naming convention for my linked record fields. So in this case, I know that I want this field name to equal the field name that it is over here because it's the same sort of relationship. So in this case, I could do link field name, and everything is wrapped in double curly braces. That is similar to a templating language known as handlebars. There's a couple others that do this as well. This just lets the script do kind of a find and replace, as there are a couple of different inputs that you could do. This one is the most straightforward, just match the name on the other table. The other one is if I wanted to say productions dash and then the name on the other table, that's what this one is. And maybe I'll do that one. So it's a little bit more clear. And then this one is pretty similar, except instead of it being a dash, it puts things in parentheses. This is the same thing, but reverse. The link field comes first. And this one allows you to put in a custom suffix. So if you don't want it to say dash table name or what have you, could have it say dash whatever or slash whatever you want. So I'm going to pick this one actually. And now it's asking, what should I name my lookup fields? I don't have any lookup fields, so I'm just going to skip this. Last one is roll-up fields. I do have a roll-up field. So this one I can do. I'm not going to do that, though. I'll come back to that later. And then it's going to show me a summary of, based on the options I just clicked through, what the current name of the fields are and what the new name of the field will be. So if I don't actually like this, I could say no, and then start over or rename them myself if my script doesn't save me any time. But in this case, this looks about right. Productions director, productions writer, productions producer. So I'm going to say yes. And it's gone through. I'm going to have to make these actually a little bit taller so you could see. It's gone through and renamed them. It's pretty fast depending on the number of fields it needs to rename. It took less than a second, it looked like, to go through and rename those. And now it's saying, okay, well, we've finished your first linked relationship with productions. Do you want to rename any of the fields from companies? I'm not going to, but I'll click through and you'll notice it's the exact same options. These fields are already named the way that they need to be. So I could say skip, I could say skip, I could say skip. It's going to notice, hey, there's no changes. So it's going to say, well, we're done then. And that is the basics of the script itself. I'm going to go back to my productions table and show you an example of adjusting lookup fields. So these lookups were created before I renamed the linked record field. So they still say contacts, contacts 2, contacts 3. It's the same sort of issue that I want to correct. I want these lookup fields to be more descriptive. Which contact is this coming from? It's coming from the director. So I'll just run this again and I'll say productions. And I want to rename fields that have to do with the contacts linkage. I don't want to rename any of my linked record fields, so I'll skip this. And now for lookups, I do want to rename them. What I want them to be is this one here is the sort of standard naming convention that Airtable will give you for lookup fields when you create them. You could see the other field name, parentheses, from, and then what the name of the linked record field is. That's the same naming convention. And I'm going to keep that naming convention. I'm just going to have it update with what the link field currently is. I don't have any roll-up, so I'm going to skip. And now you can see, instead of email from contacts, it's email from director, writer, producer, which is great. Going to hit yes, and it's going to be done. So again, it knows productions is only linked to contacts. It didn't bother asking about companies because productions aren't linked to companies in my base. So if I scroll to the right, email from writer, email from producer, and then email from director is over here. So that's what the script does. Any questions?
Very cool. No, that is awesome. So do you need to do it in a two-step process? So if you rename the field and then you want to rename the lookups to match that, will it do it? It'll pick up the new name and then update the roll-ups and lookups?
Unfortunately, it is a two-step process. So what Dan just suggested was I went in and I renamed each of or no, let's say that I was back over here because this is the one where I renamed the linked record field. And you'll notice that this roll up is still saying from productions rather than from productions director, which is the name. I can go back and make this, wrong again. And I can run this and I could say, I want to rename fields on the contacts table. And I want to rename them based on their connection to the productions table. And I think I chose this one. There's no lookup, so I can skip it. For roll-ups, if I want to correct them, it's not going to realize that this productions field is going to be renamed to this. It did notice that there's a difference because roll-ups add the word roll-up in the default naming convention. So it's removing the word roll-up. That's why it's coming through as a potential change, but it's still saying productions instead of productions-director. That is an improvement I could make to the script because it is going in sequence. It starts with the linked record fields. So by the time it gets to lookup and roll-ups, in theory, it could know what the new name is. But yeah, that's something I can do. That's not something the script currently does.
Fair enough. No, this is super helpful.
So that is what the script does and one potential improvement. So I'll just go through how the script is sort of set up. Again, the only settings up at the top is just, giving it a name and a description. Everything else is fully sort of set in the writing of the script itself. These bits right here are the parts that someone might want to customize to their own liking. I would say that you should keep the option skip at the end, because that allows you to say, I don't want to rename this type of field at all. But all of the other ones are fair game. So what this is doing is it's really just, all this is plain text, but I thought of what are the variables one might want to insert into a linked record field or a lookup or a rollup. Technically, count fields you could slide count fields in here actually pretty easily, and I'll kind of talk through how one might do that. This currently doesn't do count fields, but I'll talk through what each of the variable names kind of mean. So the link field name, that means if I'm talking about renaming a linked record field, which this variable name is saying pull from whatever inverse link there is for it, which in this case is director. Pull the name of this field into the name of this field. That's the first one. Table name, in this case, is referring to the table name is productions, and then dash link field name, which of course would be director for this one. This is the same, except it's with a parentheses instead of a dash. And that's really where you could start to customize if you want slashes, if you want to use a plus or a colon or a semicolon or a pipe character. The list goes on. This is where you could customize to whatever your team or company prefers to name things as. This should save you some time in that regard. This one is the same, except it's just the other way around. Link field comes first and then comes the table name. The last one is suffix, which I didn't show as an example, but I can. It just gives you an opportunity of take the other link field and then a text input would come up where you type in your own suffix. You do have to put a leading space if you want a space to be there. Otherwise, it's just going to have it run directly into the name of the link record field. The options for lookup fields are pretty similar. The main difference is instead of link field name, I'm saying reference field name. So in this case, this is a roll-up of the field release year on the productions table. The reference field is release year. What field are you bringing into this table? And then suffix, we just talked about. Link field name, in this case, I'm pulling from this link field. This is what it's referring to in this context. And those are really the only two variables for lookups or for rollups.
You could get the link field table name, maybe.
You could, which the way that this is written, you might be able to just slide that in, actually, just add in a new option that includes table name. I think the way that the script as a whole is written, it's always pulling from whatever this table would be if you're looking at this field, this set of fields as an example. Something we could check. But just looking at the rest of the script as a whole, what we're doing is up at the top, you select a field, or you select a table, I should say, and then that's this part, input table async. And then this bit of code is saying, all right, get all of the fields on table A that are a link to another record. That way I can see, well, what tables are relevant to those link fields. And that's where you get this array of what are the relevant tables that you could sort of cycle through. So now after you click one, we're looping through each of the tables that you can possibly select on. And from that point, that's where you can start to make those selections. So I'm going to stop this, I think. I'm going to run this again from context because I do want to show what the suffix option is. So if I choose any option that contains the variable suffix, I can add something to the end of it. So I'm going to say X, really simple, just to demonstrate what it does. Skip, and then you could see here, it took the name of the opposing linked record field, added a space, and then added an X because that's what I told it to do. And that works for lookups and rollups as well.
And I love like Airtable, their scripting extension does not support like drop-down fields. So I love like the use of buttons to showcase how you would allow for like selecting.
Yeah, they have the pre-built drop-downs, but only for tables and fields and views. You can't make your own custom drop-down, which is unfortunate. So yeah, that's why I'm using buttons for that. I would probably prefer to use a drop-down just because if you have a lot of tables or you have a lot of like naming conventions, for example, it kind of, to me, if I go through this again, this feels a little messy. I wish they would at least be all on their own line because to me, this is a little hard to read. If it was a drop down, I think it would be a better user experience, but there's only so much I could do.
Yep. But there you see, you can color the skip button to stand out. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so that is helpful in that you could say like, well, obviously the buttons that are red are gonna like abort the option basically just to sort of stop. You could always use the stop button that appears in the top right, but the reason I added these here is because if you had, let's say, one table linked to 10 other tables, and when you're making that selection at the top, you accidentally select the wrong one, having baked in sort of skip buttons within the script lets you not start all the way over. You could just say, never mind. I don't care about context. I really want to rename companies, for example.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's good.
And then I'll just sort of walk through the design of the script. It's using two functions. There's one function that's embedded within this function, and this function is called 3 times. Once for link fields, once for lookups, once for rollups. If you wanted to add count fields, you would basically duplicate this line, rename it to say _count. And then the one thing you'd have to change is this right here. So for each time this function is called, it's asking for what type of field are we searching for. And I believe the name for count is count, but you'll notice that certain field types are called something you might not expect. So link to another record, which is what it's called in the UI, it's called multiple record links under the hood. And then lookup is called multiple lookup values. Rollup is just rollup. So I'll just check that right here. If I search for the word count in the documentation, yep, count fields are just called count. So just as straightforward as a rollup. That's what you would do in order to add counts to the list. And then you'd make sure to add them to this array as well. This is just combining all of the renamed fields from each of these 3 function calls. And then the last bit is saying, did anything change? If so, put it in a table so people can like preview the output before you commit that change. And then this is a function that's like, if someone says yes, these are to be renamed, rename them. If they say no, skip. So these two functions at the bottom are the ones that are doing the bulk of the work. This one is finding, based on what type of field it is, so multiple record links in this case, get the correct formatting options. So way back up at the top, I had two different options, right? And this one is relevant for linked record fields. So first part is what naming conventions are possible for this type of field. And then the next is I have to find what are the relevant fields to fill in those placeholders. If it's a record link, I need the inverse field. What is the linked record field on the other table? If it's a lookup or a rollup, then I need the reference field, which is what is the field on this table that this is a lookup stemming from. So very similar, but slightly different things that we're targeting. Again, if you were adding a count field, you would add it to this condition here. Multiple record links probably doesn't need to be touched at all.
Yeah.
And then this part, real simple. Take the name of the whatever format the person clicked on. So if I clicked this one, for example, go through and replace all of those variables with what their actual name would be, which is determined by this block of code up here. So it's a simple find and replace.
Yeah, so table name would likely get replaced if you had that in a rollup.
Yep.
Yeah. And suffix. Cool. And there you could add a prefix as well if you wanted to.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't do a prefix. I certainly could.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so that's the variables that you have to play with. And awesome. Anything else to show in here?
I don't think so. This one was, you could check the GitHub history of it. It originally only did linked record fields, and then I went back and added lookup and rollups to it. And while doing that, I made it more function-y. My instinct is not to write based on putting everything in functions, which is best practice. So I went back and tried to clean this up to make it more readable for other folks. It probably could be more legible if I kept going. But I stopped here because this, I think, works pretty well, and it limits the amount of places that someone would have to go in and customize if you wanted to customize it.
Yeah. Yeah, and something like this, even if you like pre-configured your naming conventions, could not run in an automation because you can't update the fields in the automation.
Yeah. Any schema adjustment can't be done in an automation, which is which not great, because even if you wanted to update a single select options, an automation action that's like update record, that could add new select options, but a script can't, which is interesting because they're both automations in that case. So this has to be a script extension. And the hope is that you don't have to be running this constantly. It's really as you're setting up the table structure and field structure, you kind of run this once, and then it's kind of, you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, because you never go back in and add more fields and stuff.
Nope.
What about, do you know if a custom interface extension can update field names?
Ooh, I actually don't know. That is a good question, because I'm thinking through what the docs say. And I don't remember there being a section about modifying table structure.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't remember that being there, at least on the old custom extensions.
I made a
I mean,
I
I guess
feel
technically you could use the REST API.
you could, but then it's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if you could perform this same sort of function everywhere. Obviously, with an automation script, you wouldn't be able to have the like buttons. Like there's no person there to make these selections. But if you pre-configured, as you said earlier, Dan, what these options would be, and you just standardized your naming convention, it'd be nice if an automation could do it for you. But until then, you're kind of stuck with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Very cool. This is very useful. So we will make we'll put that link to your GitHub. So this is Camille's made this freely available for people to install into your own basis. So thank you for offering that up.
Yep.
And yeah, check it out, see how it works, see if there's anything that would be useful to include in it. I'm sure Camille would take a look at it. Cool. Well, that's today's show. We'll be back next week. We'll have a special guest next week that will come on and show some very cool stuff. I'm excited for next week's show. So check it out. Fingers crossed that Airtable will stay up this week and we'll have a productive week, and we'll see everybody next week.
See ya.